It's 1 o'clock and I'll call today's meeting to order. We have an agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda? No? Seeing none. Motion to accept the agenda as presented. Thank you. Councillor Phillips. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. We'll move on to number 3.1, delegations. We have a delegation today from the Smoky Lake County regarding the update on the nomination of the North Saskatchewan River to the Canadian Heritage River System. So I would like to welcome Mr. Kyle, is it Scholl or Scholey?
People call me a lot of names, but I can be Scholey.
Okay, and Mr. Jordan Rugg?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe what I'll do is just get my council to introduce themselves. So we'll start over here to my left with Councillor Fraser.
Councillor Fraser.
Councillor Dave Auld.
Councillor Randy Brown.
Mayor Tammy Burke.
Councillor Len Phillips.
Councillor Michelle Narang.
Dean Kraus, Town CAO.
And we have other directors in the room as well. We have Mr. Dean Schwader, Mr. Wes Ament, Miss Betty
Quinlan.
Betty Quinlan. How did that happen? And Miss Renee Hartling. Sorry, Betty. I just had a blank. I'm never going to do that again. So I will now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Council. Thank you very much for allowing Jordan and myself a couple of minutes to provide you an update. Basically, Town of Rocky Mountain House Council was one of the early supporters of this project, and I think provided kind of the impetus that was required to get the ball rolling, and we've rolled a little bit of a ways, so we have you to thank for that. I will just share our presentation on my screen so we can follow along. Does that appear to be working?
Yes.
Excellent. And as that is the case, I'll turn it over to Jordan to just introduce us quickly.
So good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Again, like Kyle said, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. And in the interest of everyone's time, which is super valuable, we'll try to be quick. So my name is Jordan Rugg. I'm the Manager of Planning and Development here at Smoky Lake County, and alongside me is my colleague, Kyle Scholey. And just to give you some context, Smoky Lake County is northeast of Edmonton, a 2-day canoe ride, if it would be, or about an hour and a half drive. One of the reasons why Smoky Lake County sort of embarked on this project is that we have a number of other things that are happening in the county as well that we believe this heritage designation would complement. There's 3 specific things actually that are aligned with the Heritage River System. The first is economic development, and recently the county has embarked on a strategy with the town of Smoky Lake and the Métis Nation of Alberta to try to leverage some of the historic and cultural assets that we have within the region. And we're very excited that the Métis Nation of Alberta has developed their site at Métis Crossing, which is directly north of the North Saskatchewan River. It's on the north bank. And they've constructed a $10 million cultural interpretive center. And they've got a hotel that's currently under construction as well. And this will attract a number of tourists to the region and will provide an opportunity for the Métis Nation to share their story and their history and their culture with people. And we believe that the designation of the North Saskatchewan as a heritage river complements the work that they're doing at that site as well. The second reason why we've initiated the project is because we're interested in renewing relations between the river communities and the nations across the Treaty 6 territory here in Alberta. And the third reason, which ties into this as well, is a strengthening of the stewardship of the land and the water. So there's that ecological and environmental component to this project as well. And we believe that the Canadian Heritage River System program is a natural fit with all 3 of these goals and values. And I'll get Kyle to move on here. So the river and the river valley are used for a variety of reasons, from recreational pursuits such as canoeing and kayaking, gold panning, that type of thing. But more importantly than that, we believe that the historic use of the river and its adjacent land is also an important component of our nation's history. It tells us a little bit about what we are and who we are. Now, Canada has approximately 40 rivers that are designated through the Canadian Heritage Rivers program. And these rivers are all recognized for their outstanding natural and cultural and recreational heritage values. As I mentioned, they're an important part of Canada's past and who we are as a people and as a nation. This network of heritage rivers is really rooted in local participation. So while it's a federal, national designation with some assistance from the provincial level, really what happens here is a grassroots kind of effort that incorporates local communities, which is why we're here in front of you today, as well as stakeholder groups as well, made up of local individuals. Now, there are a number of benefits to designation as a heritage river. Some of them are things like fostering cooperative river management, celebrating the history and the cultural connections of Indigenous people in this country, and helping them tell their stories and building that sense of identity and pride. There's also the potential to stimulate adventure travel and sustainable tourism and other recreational opportunities. The promotion of stewardship and citizenship engagement, as well as the protection of water resources in the efforts to improve public health and well-being, quality of life. Now that I've droned on for a little bit, I'll turn it over to Kyle, and he'll provide you with a little bit of an update on where we are in the process to this point and where we're heading as we move forward.
Thank you for that, Jordan. Yes, and so that kind of brings us to where we are and where we're going. Basically, I'll just also mention very quickly the story maps, which is quite an interesting platform if council has had an opportunity to visit the CHRS website and play around with what is basically a GIS, interactive GIS map, which will tell you a little bit of information about the currently nominated and designated rivers across Canada. Certainly quite a unique tool, especially during COVID times. I know that playing around with it has led me to be looking very much forward to when it's safe again to be going out in person and exploring some of Canada's exceptional rivers. So currently the 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers that is, of the North Saskatchewan River within Banff National Park are designated. Those are federal lands under the jurisdiction of and management of Parks Canada. Our proposal is to complete the nomination for the remaining several hundred kilometers across Alberta. And it's, of course, those several hundred kilometers actually, I think, where it's arguable the majority of human history and cultural significance of the river is situated. And it would deserve to be represented as such within the CHRS system. Presently, the headwaters of the Athabasca within Jasper National Park, the 50 kilometers of NSR, which I mentioned within Banff National Park, and the Clearwater River, which flows kind of from Fort McMurray through into the province of Saskatchewan, are the three designations within the province which have been completed to date. And so this proposes to extend that NSR designation. Let me continue on. Just to mention, this will come as no surprise, I believe we've mentioned it several times, designation under this program in and of itself does not create any new restrictions or red tape. That is not what this is. So the management of the NSR remains under the jurisdiction of Alberta Environment across the province. Jurisdictional matters are not affected for municipalities. And as well, ownership rights along the river corridor are also unaffected by the designation. This is very similar to a National Historic Site designation in that the designation itself doesn't carry with it any restrictions. Jurisdictional decision-making bodies can choose to bring in additional measures, but that's not a requirement to participate under the program. Skipping ahead, I'll just mention as well that we're also in dialogue with the North Saskatchewan River Basin Council in the province of Saskatchewan. They're quite excited about the project and the steam we've been gaining. The thinking there is that if Alberta proceeds with completing the designation, that others will follow suit as well. So we're quite excited about that also. Designation under the program, it should be mentioned, all rivers, all water bodies in Canada do carry heritage significance and deserve to be celebrated. Continuing on, basically we're at the stage where we're completing a nomination document which will describe the values for which the river is exceptional. That goes to the Heritage Rivers Board through Alberta Environment, and in part thanks to Rocky Mountain House's letter of support last summer. Minister of Environment Jason Nixon has committed in writing to being a champion of that. It's if the province was not willing to carry that forward, the project could not move forward. So we're very excited about that. Basically, we continue to be in dialogue with community groups that have not yet provided their support. We have received over now 55 letters of support. We're hopeful to have the opportunity to present to Edmonton City Council a little bit later this spring. And we're looking to create as diverse a coalition as possible to make this project do the most amount of good possible. So for example, just last week as well, I will mention that the Treaty 6 Confederacy of First Nations provided a letter of support as well. In the month of April, we are going to be seeking further public input as well, and that is going to take the form of a webinar series as well as online survey, out of which we will obtain a What We Heard report with some of the direction coming out of that report to be integrated into the nomination plan and then also the subsequent management plan. Just a snapshot at the various communities that have provided their support thus far. And without further ado, I know we've gone a minute or two over time, so I appreciate it. And Jordan and I would be happy to answer and entertain any questions that there might be.
Great. Well, thanks for the presentation. We are very proud of our river here. I have one question before I turn it over. Are there any advertising benefits that we could, is there going to be like an advertising scheme come out for all of us that have supported this to be able to use?
That's, Your Worship, I think a very good question. I anticipate that there will be opportunities for such things. Certainly, I think the most good that the program offers is as a vehicle to bring parties together for initiatives just such as that. So I know Rocky Mountain House bills itself as the place where adventure begins. I'd like to suggest it begins down here too. But I think we can all agree that river-based recreation and tourism doesn't begin and end within the national park boundaries. Certainly, I think groups such as Travel Alberta have been very interested in this initiative so far, and I think there's granting opportunities in that direction. And as well, even through CHRS directly, there are also granting opportunities for special studies and things of that nature as well.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? No? Nobody else? Well, that was an easy crowd, hey?
Letting us off easy.
Letting us off the hook easy.
So have you done the canoe ride that you talk about, the 2-hour or the 2-day canoe ride from Edmonton to Smoky Lake?
So I've personally done segments of it. I'm a recovering kayak guide. I spent a year living in Tofino, sea kayaking and guiding out there. I would encourage council, if you have an opportunity to come out to Smoky Lake County, to stop through Métis Crossing. They've got a fantastic interpretive program, Paddle into the Past, where they'll take you on a shorter excursion of about 2 hours from Métis Crossing down to Fort Victoria Provincial Historic Site. And I'd just also like to point out as well that actually the background study that was required through this program in order to move forward was completed in the mid-2000s. And actually the ceremony to accept that document was officiated by the former Lieutenant Governor at Rocky Mountain House. So the town actually has a very strong connection to this project already. And certainly as we move forward to a stage where we're at the formal nomination and then subsequently the designation, we'd look forward to fostering opportunities to create a special celebration to that effect as well.
That's great. Have you ever had the chance to canoe around Rocky Mountain House?
Rocky Mountain House is a soft place in my heart. I love it out there.
Good. It's a beautiful canoe ride. I had the opportunity with the NSWA a couple of times to do a few different segments of it, and it was a pretty amazing experience. So, Councillor Narang?
Hi, sorry, I do have sort of a question about all of the talk with the coal policy and whatnot going on right now. Does what's happening in our area impact this nomination, or have any impact at all, or what are you hearing?
Thank you, Councillor. I would suggest that the timing for an initiative such as this is very good, so to speak, in that there's a lot of people talking about our river environment right now. And so that conversation, I think, yields itself very nicely to this. In and of itself, if the river, saying the river was designated as of today, it wouldn't have a statutory effect on the coal policy. You know, the annual and 10-year reporting that takes place under this program, it could make reference to the fact that there's both opportunities and risks that have occurred in the previous year, such as coal, for example. But it doesn't block coal, so it's really a vehicle for public discourse. So that I think is where I would begin to answer that question. There's no, I think, one silver bullet one way or another when it comes to water management and water policy. We're blessed to have a Water for Life strategy in this province, and I think all of us are really looking forward to seeing what the coal consultation looks like beginning next month, or at the end of this month rather. So that's what I'll have to offer for you.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, it looks like we've asked all of our questions, so I just want to thank you again for your presentation, and good luck with getting the rest of the municipalities on board that you're after.
Thank you very much, Madam
Very
Mayor.
much.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day.
Good luck with the remainder of your meeting today.
Thanks. All right, moving on to number 4.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Everybody's had a chance to read them. Anybody have any concerns or changes? Okay, Councillor Brown?
If no further discussion, I'd like to make the motion to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of March 9th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. We'll move on to number 5, number 5.1, the delegation business. Just looking for a motion to accept as information. Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Accepted. Carried. Moving, no old business, new business. On to 7.1, criminal record checks. And I will turn that over to Ms. Hartling.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the February 10th Policing Committee meeting, Staff Sergeant Dinsdale presented to the committee and requested that the committee consider charging a criminal records check at the detachment here. So council made a resolution at that or the Policing Committee made a resolution at that meeting to bring this forward to council. What I've done is I've gone and I've prepared for you like a comparison of other municipalities. Just some notes on this I would like to kind of bring up. One of the reasons that Staff Sergeant Dinsdale did request a fee for service on this is that they're very time consuming. They receive a significant number of requests. It's not uncommon because there is no charge for people to make a request, but then never follow up and collect the request that was done. So administratively, it's kind of a waste of time for some of the staff when that happens. And other municipalities also charge for this service. So I kind of have gone through and kind of described so there is a difference between a criminal record check and a vulnerable sector check. The vulnerable sector is typically for people that are working with seniors or children or anyone with special needs that they go through and do a check on through vulnerable sector for that purpose. Fingerprinting is a component for like with a criminal record check, or if someone is flagged, then the fingerprinting is required. And that's a federal program, and any fees collected for that automatically goes to the Receiver General for that. As I was doing the comparison, I would, started with one municipality, I'd go to another and more questions would come up. So I ended up having to contact them a couple times to get some, all of the answers to the questions. So some of the considerations for council with the comparisons that I've provided to you is whether or not council would like to impose a fee for criminal record checks. Of the municipalities that I did the comparison with, there was 7 out of 9 that did charge a fee. The fees ranged from $20 to $50. So that would be my first question to council, is whether or not you see that as something the municipality would like to do. We're looking at a fee for service, similar to if someone came to the pool, where the charge is for the service that's provided. Second question for council would be, if council does wish to have a charge for this service, whether or not they wish to have a separate fee for vulnerable sector checks. And again, out of the municipalities that I provided the comparisons to, 2 of them provide a separate charge out of the 9. The fees range from $20 to $60. And then, of course, those that do not charge a fee do not charge a fee for vulnerable sector checks as well. So I don't know if you want me to go through the questions first, or if you want to address each question as they come up. Do you have a
Council's wish.
preference, Your Worship?
What would council like to do? Go through the questions?
Whatever's easiest for Renee is part of whatever makes the most sense.
Yeah, I can go through, and then we can go back and council can
Sure,
discuss and provide some direction on their wishes.
sure.
And then the waiving of the fee, that would be the third consideration for council, is whether or not to waive the fee for volunteers or practicum students. And again, of the municipalities that were in the comparison, 2 of the 9 reduced the fee, while the other 5 waived the fee. So the other 2 municipalities do not charge. So, and whether council wishes to have the processing of fees done at the municipal office. There were some municipalities that had the processing of the fees done at the detachment. However, they had to operate on cash, and then people were going back and forth to collect the fees. There was only 1 out of the 9 that actually had a point of sale, like a till, where they could use debit or credit cards. So, based on that, my recommendation would be for them to collect the fees here at the town office, and a receipt would be provided, and they could bring that to the detachment for processing. And that was Staff Sergeant Dinsdale's preference as well.
Renee, can I just ask a question on that?
Sure.
Then, so does that mean that they would come here first?
Yes,
Get their record check form here,
yes,
and then proceed to the RCMP
that's correct.
detachment? Okay.
Yeah.
And then would they pick up their record check at the RCMP detachment or here?
No, they would pick it up at the detachment.
Okay, thanks.
And then the other thing was just with regards to whether council would want a separate bylaw as part of the rates and charges bylaw. Most of the municipalities that I talked to, there was only 1 bylaw, and it was completely inconsistent with the process. So most of the municipalities had it either as like a fees and rates charge. There was 1 municipality that had it as like under their service level review. So it was just part of the budgeting process, but it wasn't actually incorporated into any bylaws. So my suggestion would be to do it as a fee under the fees and rates bylaw.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'd like for me to go back to the first question and for you to discuss whether or not you would like to proceed with a charge.
Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Phillips?
Being part of the policing committee and being part of the discussion when this was brought forth, it's very obvious that there's many requests for criminal record checks that are never picked up or never followed through on, which costs taxpayers money. It just does. So I'm definitely in favor of charging a fee for a criminal record check. When it comes to the volunteers, though, I would like to see either a reduced rate or waived altogether, just simply because volunteers are hard to come by these days, and we don't want to make another obstacle to someone volunteering in an organization.
Councillor Narang?
Outside of volunteers and people needing them for work, who is applying for criminal record checks?
So typically they're done for employment. They're done for volunteerism, immigration, I believe pardons as well.
So, I mean, I would like to actually see, and I don't know if this is if this is even available, of who is not picking them up. Is it volunteer sector that is not? That are the ones that are not showing up to pick it up because they've decided to not maybe have that volunteer position? Or is it people seeking them for employment? Like, I'm hard pressed to see how charging for them is not going to present barriers if we're going to still do it free for volunteers. Because I would assume, and it's a huge assumption, that it is the people doing it for volunteer roles that are the ones probably not picking it up, because that's sort of a less pressing one. But I would like to see if there is any statistics around who it is that's not picking them up.
I would have to look into that, your worship, so.
Any other questions? Councillor Fraser?
I wonder if to address that for volunteers, because you pay up front, if you pay up front and then got it back, but that might be administratively really heavy. I'm just wondering how we can not have the financial barrier, but still make sure that they're not being used frivolously.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I do agree. If it is the volunteers, we don't want to hinder the volunteers, but how do we make it fair across the board for everybody? So, Councillor Auld, did you have a question?
I did, just regarding what Len was saying, that you don't want to deter the volunteers for doing it, but it is taxpayers are paying the money. So if it is the volunteers that are costing the taxpayers the money, we're not any further ahead by going down this road.
I agree. I think if we're going to charge, we somehow have to just charge flat across the board. But I wonder if there's some way we could, I don't know, come up with another way that the volunteers, we could somehow grant them a criminal record check. I don't know. I think it's going to be easiest just to do it across the board or don't do it. To me, that would be the most fair and equitable. Councillor Narang?
And do we know how much this is, like, we would stand to create as a revenue from this, or what we would be recovering through these charges? Like, is it worth it? I mean, it is costing staff time, yes, I understand that, but how much, I guess is my question. How much staff time are these actually costing? And so what are we missing out on if we don't charge? Because I really like not charging for these services, because I think they're necessary for so many things, like employment and like volunteerism. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Auld?
Further to that, if all we're doing is taking administration from the RSMP and putting it on the town office, then we're not making any difference anyway.
Yeah, correct. We are increasing our administrative time. Right?
Taking it away from
Yeah.
them.
I just wonder if this is an opportunity to research this just a little bit more.
Absolutely, your worship. I can come back with some statistics. I could come back with, based on the numbers, what the revenue would be for the municipality, because the fees would come to the municipality for the criminal record checks. And then I can look into see what kind of administrative time goes into a criminal record check versus a vulnerable sector check, and get some statistics in terms of, what percentage comes from volunteers, what percentage comes from employment, et cetera. And then also get some statistics in terms of who doesn't pick up the, what the percentages are for who doesn't pick them up.
Thanks. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, it seems like we've raised more questions than we've provided answers for. So I'm definitely in favor of going back and doing a little more research to answer some of the questions my colleagues have asked.
Oh, I just feel that the criminal record check was put in there to keep people safe. And I would hate that now some organizations may be forced to say, we're not going to make that happen anymore, right? So I don't want to go back and make organizations be forced to make that decision. So, Councillor Fraser?
My only other comment about the research is the question about the point of sale machine. It just seems like a lot if they have to come here and pay for it here, and then they have to go, if you don't have a vehicle, it's on the other side of town. I have a point of sale machine at my house, so I'm just curious what it would cost for a point of sale machine if there were fees, so it could be processed right there and save people trips across town, possibly. Just if you're doing the research, I just didn't want to make you go back twice.
Mr. Kraus?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So this is actually a request from Staff Sergeant Dinsdale. So maybe it'd be best for council to actually have him come as a delegation and explain his rationale behind it. He could probably answer all of those questions for council of how much time it is for a check and how much time it consumes of the administrative staff. I know he was pretty concerned over the time that it takes for the staff to do it. Mm-hmm. And it was quite a high percentage that never did pick them up. If I recall correct, it's like 30%.
Yes.
Don't pick them up. So, I mean, his main purpose of bringing this forward is to reduce that. So, but if we could bring him as a delegation for council, then I think more questions could be answered than us just trying to find the research.
Yeah, and I think that would be important too to know, who doesn't pick them up. I mean, obviously they don't need them then. Like, would they be, he could answer those questions, I guess, or maybe we could give him a heads up to that those kinds of questions.
Yeah, Your Worship, we would ask him to be a delegation and give him, these are the questions council will have for you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any other questions then? Councillor Narang?
It's not really a question, and I could probably bring it up when Sergeant Dinsdale is here, but is there a method that we could bill the people who don't pick it up? We have all of their information. So there could be something along those lines. I don't know. I don't know how you'd follow up with that, but maybe that's just something I wanted to say out loud so it didn't get lost.
On file for
Yeah.
next time they come in.
But they're only good for so long, right?
At the charge.
Oh, but I'm just wondering, because I think are the criminal record checks, do they have a timeline? 6 months, you think? Okay, another question.
If you apply for a new position, you have to have one that I think is completed within 6 months.
But what about the schools? Like, is your criminal record check good for the year? So those would be questions that I would have as well. So, I mean, we're all guessing and saying, yeah, I think it is, but I think the best thing is to have those answered by the people that completely know. Councillor Fraser?
Like when you get a parking ticket or a traffic ticket that you didn't get written at the time, when you go to register your vehicle, it comes up and they say there was a fee that you did a parking ticket, you didn't pay for it, you pay for it now, or you don't register your vehicle. I'm curious if a similar program would work where you get the criminal record check, you didn't pick it up, you're probably going to go in for another criminal record check at some point, and you've got a no pickup fee or charge before that you must pay before you can request another one. That might stop the serial abusers.
Councillor Phillips?
I mean, without going down that rabbit hole too far, I would think that our only recourse for someone that doesn't pay would have to send it to collections. I don't think we have the ability to add that on to a provincial registration or anything like that as a municipality. Again, we'd have to be clarified, but.
So,
Yeah, Your Worship, that would not be an option
Yeah.
for us under legislation.
so what I'm looking for right now then is just to have a motion, Councillor Brown.
To make a motion that council direct administration.
Light.
I'd like to make a motion that council direct administration to have a discussion with Staff Sergeant Dinsdale in respect to appearing before council as a delegation.
You have everything there, Renee? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Is everybody clear on that motion? Okay. All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, thanks for that conversation, guys. Okay. We'll move on to 7.2, the extension of the ice season. Mr. Ament.
Good
Turn that
afternoon,
over
Your
to
Worship
you.
and Council.
Afternoon.
So I'm before you today just as follow-up from our discussion on February 9th, when Council approved keeping both ice surfaces in until April 1st. Indicated at that time I would come back mid-March to give you a status report and talk about the possibility of extending the ice season for a few weeks into April. So administration has met with the user groups that have been using the ice currently under the existing restrictions that the province has and the allowed activities that are taking place within the arena. So we did a follow-up with our ice users on March the 9th. Rocky Minor Hockey has indicated that they would continue to use ice until April 24th if it's available. You know, they support keeping one ice surface in and making the other ice surface available for dry floor use. They do expect that maybe some of their numbers will start to dwindle. Right now, they've divided many of their age groups into two groups, and they anticipate that they would still have enough use to warrant that time. They currently using about 25 hours a week on the two ice surfaces. Rocky Speed Skating has also indicated that they would use ice into April if the bunch ice is available. They specified the bunch arena because that's the rink that they utilize their mats. And they're currently using about 6.5 hours of ice per week. The Junior B Rams have indicated that they would likely take at least one ice session per week. Right now, they're doing a couple of sessions. I think one of the challenges that some of the hockey users are finding is that from a coaching perspective, it's hard to keep the players from, you know, the 3 meter social distancing that the province allows. We've had a couple of incidents where groups have mixed a match and they're actually doing some drills and shinny types of activities. Our staff have just spoken to the coaches and say, you know, really that's not a permitted use, you know, according to the province. We haven't gone out, you know, enforcing that they do or don't. We just mentioned it to the coaches and to the Minor Hockey Association. But based on that, if we were to go down to one ice surface, we would probably have around 22 hours of evening and weekend ice available for rental. And currently the users are using about 35.5 hours a week. So to go down to one ice surface is certainly doable. From a financial perspective, that would bring in about $3,200 a week of ice sales. You know, all the use groups are youth related, so it's $100 an hour is the fees that we collect from the youth. So that certainly would be enough to cover the utilities. Doesn't cover staff time, but our staff are there and engaged anyways with maintenance activities. So basically, I guess, based on the commitment received from the user groups, you know, administration feels that there would be enough ice that could be sold to warrant keeping one ice surface in until April the 24th. if there were unanticipated changes, either to the provincial health restrictions or commitments from the user groups, if things change, then we would make that decision on the fly. But at this point, we've got what we feel is enough commitment to keep at least one ice surface in for an extended period of time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ament on ice extension? No. I think, you know, it's 3 more weeks and it gives the group some more time to make up and hopefully get ready for the next season.
Yes, we have, I didn't mention it, but the Baseball Association has already been phoning and asking for dry floor as early as they can get into April. Mind you, the way the weather's looking, they might be on their regular fields earlier than usual as well. But
So they would use the other arena?
they
then
would
for
use the quick lane, and usually what they do is they set up a batting cage.
Okay,
And in talking with our arena manager, often it's been set up in the bunch arena, but we do have the ability to set it up in the quick lane
okay,
so that they could use.
great, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ament? Councillor Phillips?
If there is no further discussion, I'd like to make a motion that council accept the ice season extension report and instruct administration to keep one ice surface in until April 24th, 2021.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Japers, I shouldn't. Looking for a motion, please, to accept correspondence for information 9.1 to 9.10 as written. Councillor Auld. Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Then we'll move on to number 10, 10.1, CAO report. Mr. Kraus. How many?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the department's activities are listed before council. So not to just to go through them all, just if council has any questions on any of the items.
I don't have any questions. I've read the report. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kraus? Okay. I'll make a motion to accept the CAO report as written. All in favor of that motion? Carried. Thank you. So then we'll move on to director's reports. Okay, we have the first report is Recreation and Community Services. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ament? No? Okay. The second report will be Corporate Services. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Quinlan? Sorry, Betty. Any questions for Corporate Services? Councillor Auld?
I'm just curious, Betty, how the audit and everything has rolled out.
We just finished the caseware file. They're just actually starting today. So it's a little bit behind in terms of the audit starting, but they got a complete, fully done caseware file. So they should just have to audit it.
Perfect.
So we had a meeting with them last week and Mr. Wade was quite optimistic that we failed to meet their deadline. So.
I just wanted to hear that vocally.
Yeah, no, it's all signed, sealed, and delivered.
Good. Any other questions for Ms. Quinlan? Okay. We'll move on to Planning and Community Development. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Schwader? No? Councillor Auld?
Can you remind me, when was their other court or peace officer?
The new edition is May 27th.
It was supposed to be end of March, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and it's been pushed till May 27th.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for Mr. Schwader? Okay, and then the last report from the directors we have is Engineering and Operations. Councillor Phillips?
Just a quick question in regards to 54th Street. I see that CN has is possibly going to put a delay in that because of not being able to get the materials to create the crossing. Is that correct?
Your worship, I'll have to consult with Mr. Shanks on that to get a clear answer for council, so I'll have that out tomorrow morning.
Any other questions on Mr. Shank's report? No? Okay, seeing none, just a motion to accept 10.2, the director's report as written, please. Councillor Fraser? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. We'll move on to the action list, number 11.1. Does anybody have any questions about the action list and the items that are on there? No questions? Councillor Phillips?
I'll make a motion to accept the action list as presented.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? Sorry, can I ask for a show of hands again? All in favor of that motion? Carried, thank you. Moving on to number 12. Does anybody have any administrative inquiries? Councillor Auld.
Through Dean to Mr. Shanks, would you be able to get a report done up for that, the large water main break we had on the corner of 60th and 11A? Just something that we could present to the residents as form of a info sheet. This is what we do, this is what it costs, this is how much time, this is...
Your worship, we are working on that, and maybe I'll have Ms. Button provide an update on that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Auld. We have it's quite the tangled web in that corner, as we know, and so I have the write-up from our engineering and operations crew who were there, looking just for a couple of figures in terms of the stats of what that cost. With all of the iron that they had running and the time it took. And then it will be packaged as an information bulletin. And you'll be the first, council will be the first to get it once it's finalized, and it will be done this week.
Thanks, Ms. Button. Councillor Fraser?
So I've had a few seniors contact me about whether there were going to be larger vaccination locations, and I know that we don't have any control over that. But right now there's just 2 small pharmacies, and I know that we had talked about maybe reaching out to AHS if they were looking for a larger rollout. I was just curious if there was an update on that.
I did reach out to AHS to offer up our facilities in case they needed a bigger facility to get a large amount of people. They are willing to take us up on that offer if that should happen. And currently, I don't know if there's a way that we could get all of the pharmacies that are, I do know Shoppers is, Alpine is as well. I wonder if there's a way that we could somehow get information from the pharmacies that are offering vaccines for seniors. And because the other number, the AHS number that you contact is those people go to the COVID testing site for their immunizations, and those are rolled out in years of birth. But I wonder if we should just do some sort of an information sheet for our community on our Facebook page or website or something like that.
Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. Councillor, Ms. Button?
No, thank you, Mayor. The challenge with COVID has been for a year now is that things are often changing. So we'll stick with driving people to the sources, which is AHS. But one thing I will do is put those together for our front desk staff who often get those public phone calls. And so they have it at their fingertips to assist in that manner. We did that throughout the pandemic, but now with the vaccine rollout, we haven't done that update to our public facing staff. So if it pleases council, then we can make sure they have that info just to better serve our public.
I just wonder if we could reach out to the drugstores, so the pharmacies, and find out who is, because I've looked on their websites. I've seen Alpine has one. I don't know if Co-op, and I'm not sure about the drugstore or the pharmacy on Main Street. I just think it would be fantastic for our public to know where they can go. Counselor Fraser, did you have something to add?
Oh, I believe they have to be, I think the pharmacies are in line with AHS because AHS has to provide them with the vaccine. So I know that Co-op isn't, but because they're just not on the list at the moment. So I don't know whether there's going to be a more extensive rollout with the larger, with all the pharmacies, or whether AHS is going to do large vaccinations like they did with H1N1 in big centers.
So could we find out how we know where we can get our immunizations? I guess that's, well, because there seems to be more than one avenue to get an immunization, and there seems to be a lot of confusion in the community as to where you get that information, that the vaccination. So how could we clarify that?
Your worship, I'll contact Alberta Health Services to see if they can provide us with updates on that, and then we can repost.
Okay,
I think that'd be, like Ms. Button said, it does change and it seems to change daily.
right.
But I'll try to make that connection, maybe through Mr. Swanson, and he can
Okay.
lead me to a.
And can we then clarify as well if they're the ones that are also getting the pharmacies on board, or like, because do people go through HS for the pharmacies? I don't think so. I think they go directly to the pharmacy.
Your worship, I'm not too sure, so we can clarify.
Okay, that would be great. Councillor Narang?
I was going to say AHS website, where the COVID vaccine website, you can actually link to the pharmacy and link to the AHS site. So it's all right there for you.
Okay.
So it's easy to find. So that's something that we could share.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. That good, Councillor Fraser?
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other administrative inquiries? No? Any notices of motion? No? Okay, it is 1:51.